Welcome to That Sounds Terrific in the 585. Join hosts Nick Koziol and Christine Green as they spotlight the incredible leaders, visionaries, and innovators shaping Rochester and the 585 community. From transformative stories to big ideas, we celebrate the people making our community a better place to live, work, and thrive. So sit back, relax, and listen to what makes the 585 sound terrific.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of That Sounds Terrific, sort of our rebranding episode, because we're changing platforms a little bit to That Sounds Terrific in the 585, where we're going to be featuring guests and people that are closely related to Rochester, New York, and the greater Western New York region. There's a familiar face right here on the show right now in Christine Green. She's been on the show actually multiple times. And our sister show, That Sounds Terrifying. And I'm bringing her on as a co-host so that I have someone else to ask terrific questions. So welcome, Christine.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited. This is right in my alley because I like to talk, as anyone who's ever met me knows. So thank you, Nick, for bringing me on to That Sounds Terrific in the 585. And today we have Jackie E. Davis, the creator and artist behind our favorite comic in 585 magazine and many other places, including her own book. It is Underpants and Overbites creator, Jackie E. Davis. Welcome, Jackie.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting.
We're really excited to have you. When Christine told me, I asked her to kind of put some guests together, and like you shot up right at the top. I'm like, I got to talk to her. That's awesome. So thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for getting me away from my baby for a little while.
Hold them tight. Hold them
he's
tight.
He's asleep below me. So
we'll
below you, underneath, in like a second, the bottom story of your house, or under your desk?
Just pull him out. Here he is.
He's too old for that now. I did put him to sleep under a dining room table at a party once, but now he's on the move. No, I'm in my studio, which is the third floor of my lumpy house, and then he's asleep on the second floor.
Nice.
And then who knows what's happening on the first floor? I don't know.
Did you refer to it as a lumpy house?
Yeah, it's a little lumpy, but it's like the Rochester house with character, where it was like beautiful at one point, and then someone painted it like 100 times, and
never removing the paint below it, right?
Yeah, and like the doors don't really shut, like all the paint gets stuck.
Yeah,
I've got a lumpy house too. Yeah.
Ours is lumpy, and probably some other descriptors that are somewhat negative around having 4 kids. But totally can relate to that. I definitely like, are those like the yep kind of characters in the background on your?
Oh yeah, we're in my studio, so we got the yip yips, and I got a big light bulb lamp.
Yeah,
so cool.
Here's stuff. Like a standing desk. I got my sitting desk.
The standing desk, but like in perspective, looks like it's like over large furniture, like it's too big, like it's almost comically big in perspective right now.
Yeah, I do like it like really tall too, so that's where I paint when I stand up. Yeah.
So Jackie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of like what you do, and kind of where you came from.
Oh, well, I make a webcomic that aspires to come out regularly, and it does. It's like, but my Instagram says like 3 times a week, and sometimes it's like weeks, or they kind of change. But I make a diary comic about my life that features like me and my husband and my baby, who I call Peanut. And it's ink and watercolor, but now that I have a baby, I do a lot of faster, just like line drawing with pen, because I like to push myself with the storytelling. But I feel like with watercolor is like really relaxing, but it's more of like a time-consuming hobby craft. I don't know how to describe it, but the writing is like really new and interesting and challenging, and the painting is like, it's like the cherry on top, but I'm so busy sometimes I don't have time for the cherries at the moment. So I'm like, I'll just write it. And people seem to like both versions, and there's pros and cons to just black and white drawings and then the colored ones, because the colored ones make like better prints. And I make a
Mhm.
colored comic for 585, which is always fun because I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I haven't painted a ocean in a while.
That's awesome. We talked off the air about like I dabble in things, and yeah, watercolor is something I dabble in, and it can't be for dabblers because it's so challenging, for me anyway. So that's impressive though. Being a parent and juggling art, trying to get everything
Yeah,
in, right?
I'm like I watch him full time too, so I like work when he naps, but it's actually really nice like hanging out with a tiny person because while like there's so much to do, it's hard to take a break, but sometimes all he's going to do is like play with a frisbee in the yard, but someone has to watch him. Like I
Right.
can't do
Yeah.
anything else except watch him. And while I'm doing it, I'm like, this is kind of nice. Like this,
Yeah.
this is kind of peaceful. And I think about what I'm going to draw next. And because it's a diary comic, now his interactions contribute to the content that I'm creating. And
Mhm.
it's, I don't know, kind of like a nice cycle. But watercolor is the only way that I can paint. I can't do oils or acrylics or even working digitally because I know a lot of people work digitally, but
Mhm.
I'm not on that train yet or
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah. Well, you stick to what you love to do, right? And what you know and want. And um it's funny, like I love those types of comics too, like yours, that are featuring real things that are going on. Like when I was growing up, the comics that I always like really gravitated to were the ones that were about family and about those types of you know, funny things that happen, like uh Calvin and Hobbes, for better or for worse, those types of things that I would grew up on, because they were like I could relate to them immediately, right? So,
Yeah, like the slice of life. There's
mm,
there's kind of a low buy-in. It's like because sometimes there's a whole universe where I'm just like, oh man, I miss that train. And like I've never watched Star Trek, and I'm like, ooh, I think I missed it. Like it's no offense to those Star Trek fans,
yeah.
I'm sure it's great. But like my comic is just like, oh, it's just a tired mom. I get it. Like
Yeah.
I am tired too. And I don't know how people, how you're like, I don't know how people can paint watercolor. I don't know how people can write fiction. And
Mhm.
so that's my limitation because everything that I make is inspired by my life. And it's either something that just happened, something I'm thinking, or like a childhood memory. But to create a story about like a witch
Mhm.
that gets lost is like, what? How does anyone do that?
Yeah, that's hard stuff. Fiction is hard. I was just telling someone yesterday that I want to challenge myself to write more fiction because it's very like, how do you know? You just you let the story unfold. And yes, that's exactly what you do. But yeah, I also write about my life. And so I completely get that. And um when you were younger, what were the comics we just talked about, Calvin and Hobbes, which was my favorite, for better for worse. And what were you reading when you were prior to really getting into this webcomic as your career? What comics were you reading when you would pick up a newspaper? Remember those?
I always read newspaper comics, but I didn't really know what was going on. But there was one called Sherman's Lagoon, and it was like these domestic sharks that like watched TV and like the white shark like wore pearls. And I still didn't really understand what was happening, but I loved the character design. It was like chubby sharks and anything that's like any animal that's given these human attributes and it would like watch TV, but it would like sit on a rock and then the TV would be underwater, which is just like logistically like an electrocution
Yeah.
situation. But I would be like, yeah, I love these sharks. And then anything that had like real human characters, I found like kind of disturbing. Like Mary Worth was just this
Oh,
dramatic,
yes. Those
then
drama ones were weird to me.
yeah, and I was just like, I don't know. I rather read about like a carrot that is like eating a hot dog, even though that's really confusing. And so I love the funny pages were just like full color, but I didn't super understand what was happening. But I loved the Far Side
Oh yeah.
because
Oh,
there were these like dung beetles that came to a party, and there were like other
Yep.
bugs at a party, and one like a praying mantis was like, ugh, there are those dung beetles and their dungarees. And I just remember being like, this is for me. This
Yeah.
is
The Far
and
Side
so
is
Yeah.
absolute classic. Like what my son and I have talked about, he's a big Snoopy fan.
Mhm.
And he's 20, by the way, but he's a huge Snoopy fan, absolutely obsessed with Charles Schultz. And he just loves the Far Side too. So we're big comic fans. I was telling him, I remember every day reading the comics in the paper, and then Sunday was the big day for the comics. And he was like, it's so different because we don't get a newspaper anymore.
yeah, it's so wild to think that there were like 15 comics. And I mean, that's the cool part is like the gatekeeping has dissolved, but
Mhm.
then the infinite variety is like super overwhelming. So how do you ever get seen
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
as,
That
a comic creator now?
Yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging in a lot of different areas now with the internet and social media in particular, like opening up so many voices. It's so hard to drown out what is important, like to find what is important, right?
Mhm.
Or as an artist, like not have your work stolen like immediately, to not to actually make a living, right? So that's a huge, huge challenge. But yeah, the Far Side, there's so many classics in that. Midville School for the Gifted is always the one that like I think of. And I don't know if
Oh, the
everyone's aware
kid's
of
like
that.
pushing on
He's
a door, but
pushing
it
and the
says
door says
pull.
pull. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
there's,
I'm
there's
like,
also a cow one that's like
yeah.
really famous. I can't remember how it goes, but there's something about cows that's like so confusing and random, but it's hilarious.
There's
Yeah.
one where like a farmer is milking the cow and the cow is standing, and the farmer's like, man, I hate it when they stand.
They do this. Yeah.
And it's just like, I always liked how like kind of ugly it was. It's sort of inspiring in a way that's like,
Yeah.
it can be all lumpy, and like the way the ladies have like a beehive
Yep.
Yeah.
hair and the glasses, and they're like,
The little pointy.
Yeah. They're always, yeah.
Um, Jackie, can you, Nick, if you don't mind me jumping
Yeah,
in
go
here,
ahead.
let's rewind back a little bit to when you started doing Underpants and Overbites. What year, where are we talking about in terms of years? How long ago was this?
that was 2016.
2016. And what led you to beginning this? Obviously, you're an artist and you love comics, as we've just discussed. What led from I'm an artist who loves comics to creating a comic? What was the inspiration to just sit down and start drawing?
Honestly, didn't really know that comics like existed in the capacity that they do. I saw the funny pages, I saw the Far Side, read a lot of like Where's Waldo, and then I went to art school by just like a miracle because I thought you could only major in the classes that you took in high school. And so I was like, English, meh, science, meh, history, meh. And I was like, gym, meh. And I was like, how about art? And then my family was like, okay. And it was in that time where it was like, yeah, you go to college, you pick a thing and you go to college. And so I went to Syracuse. And then at Syracuse, I picked it because the mascot's in orange. And I was like, that's fun. And I probably should have checked the finances of it. But I went to Syracuse, and then I met Pat there, my husband. And he was like, are you here for the incredible illustration program? And I was like, I guess. And then he was like, well, do that. And I was like, okay. So then I did illustration. I know it's like it's so bad. Oh my.
No.
And I read yeah, oh man, it was just I was like, yeah, why not? And so he had been planning this forever. And then I just took a bunch of illustration, which is a great fit because I love storytelling. And so throughout college, I would like journal separately, and then I would draw like fun stuff. And I can do some traditional work, like traditional portraits, and got like my grandma to be like, "You are an artist, yay!" And then I kind of turned back to just like eggs rolling down hills and being like, eggs over easy. And my professors are like, ah, it's disappointing. And so then they gave me a diploma, and I was like, sick. And then Pat and I moved to Austin, and we had these really art adjacent jobs that weren't art. Like I worked in a screen printing shop, which was like really cool and had cool posters, but I mostly just like shot tags through a t-shirt gun. And then it was a small owned business, and like eventually he was kind of running out of money, so then they'd like have me go buy their groceries and stuff. And eventually he was like, "Ah, we're gonna have to lay you off." And I was like, "Yeah, no kidding, what am I doing here?" And then I worked at coffee shops, and I would like draw stuff, but I mostly drew Christmas presents because if you make it a gift, no one can say that it's bad. And so I sort of got lost for a little while. And then Pat was like, "Oh, you should really read like some graphic novels." And I was like, "Yeah, I've read, I don't want to read Spider-Man or whatever." And he was like, "No, like check some of this stuff out." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I read Blankets by Craig Thompson. And it's like a personal narrative about him growing up Christian and then like not really vibing with it. And it was just like the artwork was so beautiful. And then I read all these autobio comics, and I was like, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. And I kind of combined all the journaling I'd done with all the silly things I was drawing. And then I saw that people were making web comics that were really successful. So then I was like, oh, I'm going to make comics about my life and put them on the internet. And then the internet is going to like pay my bills or whatever. And
yeah, as
then
it
I
does.
I moved to Rochester with Pat because my family's from around here, and I have more relatives that are like, Austin was really fun, but it's hard to be away from family and to be kind of like, I don't know any like middle-aged people with like free furniture. Come on, I need something. And so Rochester was like, welcome, like Thanksgiving at my aunt's house. And then she's like, here's, take these Tupperwares of food. And I'm like, yes, this is exactly what I came here for. And Rochester's like the perfect size place to have people that are like highly skilled people at everything, but to have like few enough, I don't know what that sentence is, few enough of them to have like an opening for you. Like if you're like, hey, I really like making kombucha. And they're like, well, join the kombucha club. It's not like, oh, sorry, we already have like 1,000 people, and this formed a long time ago, and there's no space for you here. So I felt really welcomed. Yeah. We're good. Like we've
got enough kombucha.
Yeah. And so everything here is like, yeah, come on. And even 585 magazine is like, yeah, we'll publish your comics. And I'm like, really? And I teach comics at libraries and universities and stuff. And so yeah, in 2016 I just like put a comic online every week for 2 years, and nobody really cared. And I was working at coffee shop, and then I did 100 comics in 100 days and put that on the internet. And then social media kind of like blew that up. And then coincidentally, Pat went back to grad school to become a teacher. And like the day he started teaching in like September, and I was like, okay, I'll work at a coffee shop till June so we can like save more money or whatever. And then like the day after he started work, I was like, please let me quit. Please, 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 please. And he was like, fine, I'll give you a year to see if you can make this work. And the good thing about working at a coffee shop is like to make that equivalent with art is not too big a jump. So I never really had a career I was leaving to do this. And now I just make comics and have an online store and teach them and keep a baby alive.
Keep a baby alive. That's awesome. Oh, I thought you were gonna go like, oh, what the great thing about working in a coffee shop is all the coffee. You know?
I never drank coffee. I only drink decaf.
So,
Regular coffee makes me like fall down the stairs.
well, yeah, you might get all jittery while you're drawing, and that might be bad. Why there's not a straight line on any of these comics?
I miss the free cookies though.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been my downfall.
Yeah. When I was younger, yeah, go ahead.
I miss them, but like don't miss, it was for the best that we
of
broke
that we
up.
parted. I used to work at Friendly's when I was younger, and like people couldn't believe that I didn't like eat the ice cream and all that stuff. And I'm like, you don't want to eat the ice cream.
Yeah, you're like seeing how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
You're like,
no. And that, and like you're constantly scooping ice cream and getting sticky and all this other stuff, and you're giving it to other people. I'm like, I'm done. And Christine might disagree with me because her book's called Sweet Tooth. So I mean,
Never done with the sweets.
Yeah.
Never done with the sweets.
But Jackie, I was going to ask, because you were talking a little bit about teaching and things like that, and one of the things that, again, when we were talking up the air, I was talking about all the things that I dabble in and all the things that I want to do, and I spread myself thin. And one of them has honestly been, to create like a comic book, or at least a children's book. But the art part gets in my way. Like I can do it pretty good, decent, but I'm not good. So what advice do you have for like listeners that are trying to maybe get involved a little bit with, illustration or writing a book, and they need an illustrator, those types of things?
And they don't want to do it themselves?
Well, maybe they want to learn, I
Okay.
do want to learn. Like I know that I have a little bit of talent. I just need to practice. It's like me with everything.
Yeah, I would say like, my origin story was like super abbreviated, but it comes
Right.
with way more like, what am I doing with my life? Who am I? I hate everything that I'm making. No one will ever care. My aunt liked it. Great. I love you, Jackie. I'm like, stop it. You're making my post look weird. Get out of here. But when I first discovered like graphic novels and how cool they were, I really didn't understand how to create them. And so I would like draw things, but the gap between like what I wanted and what I was capable of and what I wanted to create was like really big and so daunting that it was like depressing. And so I decided to set a time limit on how long to not a limit, like a time quota for how long to spend on the thing that I'm trying to learn. And so it was like, I don't know, maybe 10 hours a week where I would be like, okay, I'm going to draw for 10 hours a week, no matter what it is. And I would just sit down and I would like set a timer and then just try to draw. And eventually the gap sort of like closed because I gave myself the space to experiment, and just like the time was the accomplishment. And instead of being like, I'm going to make something awesome today, because that's just too much pressure. And so that really helped. And then eventually I didn't need a timer anymore because I was like so into it and I felt like I could express what I was trying to say. So maybe that would help with like trying to make children's book content, or if you're like, oh, I really want to like make a collaged children's book, then it's like, well, just do it for whatever, 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week. Like time passes no matter what, and then eventually you'll just be good at it, and then people like pay you to teach it, and you're like, really? Me?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really to piggyback on that. I think that's a really wonderful way to kind of hone skills and practice mindfulness, really. And I would say that would go far in any sort of creative endeavor. So of course I come from writing, and for me, there's a lot of people, there's this idea for some creatives, whether it's music, art, writing, whatever, you name it, that you in the writing world, a lot of people call it the 5 a.m. club, that you get up and you just do it every day. And I understand that. But what works better for some people, like for me, for example, is to have either that time limit, like, okay, I'm going to write for 5 hours this week. I'm not going to write every day. Or conversely, what I'm doing, like right now, I have a practice with some friends that we each write 100-word, micro essay once a week, and we share it with each other. And it's
Cool.
amazing how you
Yeah.
say, I'm just going to do 100 words a week, how that can crack open creativity, right? So like that, whether it's like I'm 10 hours a week or 100 words or one panel of a comic, sometimes just the doing is the part of it, right? We want to come out with this beautiful thing at the end, but we are more than the thing at the end. We're the creator. So there's me waxing philosophical there,
No,
but there you go.
no,
No,
you
I
go. Yeah, go ahead,
oh
Jackie.
I think there's so much like wisdom in like sort of a production schedule in a way, because like for me, I aspirationally make 3 comics a week, and it's like that's a lot, but also it pushes me to like discover new, like I'm like, okay, this is fast enough and I have to work quickly, but it makes me make my ideas not so precious. Where if someone was like, you have to make 1 comic a year, it's like, well, that better be really good. And then if it's not, I'm gonna be depressed for the whole next year until I can create something, and that's not to say like I don't aspire to make a long-term project. It's just my life right now doesn't have the space to work on like a giant graphic novel or something like that. And so I'm just kind of feeding the internet and like making stories in real time. And to make that many a week is like, oh, that one was really bad. It's like, that's okay. There'll be a new one in a few days. And so that's kind of like the 100 words a week is like, well, this week I really phoned it in. And then it's like, oh, that's okay. Like next week
Yeah.
I'll be inspired. And to even just be like, oh, like 3 comics a week, it's like one idea creates like 5 more ideas. And then I just have like a whole whiteboard covered in ideas. And I'm like, this is more ideas than I could ever create in my lifetime. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I love the ideas that you both set forth because, like, I already use some of those strategies in my professional life, right? Blocking out time to do specific things. And, like, I don't do that for creativity, like I'm also one of those people, like I dabble like in things and I dabble in guitar and stuff like that. And sometimes my voice is really, really good. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep singing, and other days I'm like, wow, my voice really, really sucks. I,
Oh,
like I can't hit any of the notes anymore. And as I get older, like your structure, your vocal cords change a little bit. And some of those high notes I used to be able to hit and sustain can't hit certain days. But what I'm trying to say is I really like the strategies because like, yeah, it is about practice and consistency. And like Christine, when you were saying like having I have professional groups I belong to and network with that keep each other accountable, like even groups within the college and stuff. So having like a creative accountability sort of process makes so much sense. So I think a lot of listeners would be like, if they're interested in starting something like Jackie's doing or even writing like you, Christine, that those are great tips. But Jackie, like, all right, you've accomplished a lot so far. Like, where do you see this going in the future? Like, what's your aspirations for the future with this comic or, maybe another project that you'd like to talk about?
I think a lot of people see like a bigger thing as
Mhm.
a form of accomplishment, like a TV show or
Mhm.
something. But I really like I think Bill Watterson went a little like hard on the hermitness, but I really like that it's a Calvin and Hobbes just like exists as it does. And
Mhm.
so my goal really is to like keep my business alive until Peanut goes to school.
Mhm.
And so it's like looking good over here. And then once he goes to school, it's like, oh, now I have more time to do bigger projects. But at the
Mhm.
moment, it's like, it's just a lot of, it's just juggling like a
Mhm.
thousand things. But one day I really would like to have a full length, like graphic novel that's some kind of story about my life. But it's interesting as I age, what I think I would write about changes.
Mhm.
But I am just experimenting with like longer and longer inked stories and kind of trying to figure out how to like, it's like my stories right now, they can only make it a certain length. It's like going to the grocery store without a cart,
Mhm.
and then I have like 30 things in my hands, and if it's past a certain length, everything like just falls apart. And so right now I'm just playing with longer
Mm.
form
Yeah.
storytelling, and yeah, I kind of just aspire to have it like old timey and slow. Really, I've just been trying to finish my website for like years, and it embarrasses me. So, there's like a list, there's like a thing on my cork board that's like things to accomplish by September. And I was
Yeah.
like, hey, I did a lot of it. And then I moved a piece of paper over and it said 2022. And I
Yeah.
was like,
I did my year-long plan in 3 years and counting.
yeah. And then I
Gosh.
remember I
That's
like
okay.
met with my web developer and I was like, I'm not gonna take forever like some people. And
Right?
then I was like,
Oh,
oh, I'm
man.
so embarrassed.
You are some people. We're all
Yeah.
some people.
Yeah,
That's
I know. I
awesome.
even had a day off recent, like so. Pat will watch Peanut, like he has the summer off, so he'll watch Peanut for like a whole day, and then I get to work on whatever, and then I'll watch him for a whole day, and Pat gets to work on whatever, and I'll be like, Pat, I had a whole day, and I like didn't accomplish that much. He's like, tell me about it, Jackie. I had a whole day, and I was like, on my day off, I'm gonna become president, and then it's like you just accomplished like three things, then you got to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you're like, what happened? And then
Yeah. As
so
parents, like, I can totally relate to that, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Oh
I
God.
am going to do this today. Dad,
yeah,
can you make me chicken nuggets? It's 6 in the morning. I want chicken nuggets. All right. And then, like, you finish with that, and it's one more request from the other kid, or, so totally relate. You think you're going to have this grand day off. Nope.
yeah, it's like should I answer the emails I've been avoiding, or should I prepare like a decent meal for my family? And then it's like you can only pick one. You
Yeah,
can't pick two.
That's
absolutely.
awesome.
I had a question, if you guys don't mind here, Jackie. I want to take it back to the community of people who are your fans. You have a huge following, particularly on Instagram, and you even published a book of your comics, right? What is it like um having so many people like and comment on your social media? Is it ever get weird or hard, or are there times you're like, I can't look at Instagram again? Tell me a little bit about that relationship you have with your fans through there.
I love it. I would put myself in the 99th percentile of not alarmed by strangers. And so like yesterday, this family came to my house and the dad was like, I used to live here as a boy. And my brother was like, he was outside, he's visiting, he was like, okay, like, and then I was like, you want to come in? And the family was like, yes. And so then I gave them like a whole tour and I was like, what do you recognize? And then I sent them on their way. We all got a selfie. But I think other people will be like, that was weird. And that's like not related to Underpants and Overbites, but like having people comment is like so validating to my life. Like I don't feel that weird as a person, but then a lot of people will be like, I feel so seen, like you're a freak like me. And I'll be like,
It's
huh,
awesome.
oh, I didn't know that. And then I mean I do have some people that are like that's ADHD for you. And I'm like, I don't think I have ADHD. And they're like, you do. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it gets, yeah, I mean it's interesting. At first it was a little overwhelming, and I like resented that not everyone has a diary comic that I can read about, like, well, what have you been up to?
Yeah.
But I really like it now. It's just such a cool way to connect with people. And it's like, because it's, I don't know, I think, there's lots of creators who create these like fictional worlds, and then you're like, this is the coolest world ever. And then you meet the creator, and the creator's like, "Eh." And then you're like, you're not anything that I expect. But a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, after I met you, you're like the exact version of your comic. You're just like a alternate reality version. And so it just feels like people get to know me more
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
such a cool way. And they'll be like, oh, I found this hat. I thought you'd like it. And I'm like, oh, I do, like this, how'd you know?
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, one time I like went, our friend was getting married in Hong Kong. And so we flew to Hong Kong, and then Pat had to go back to work, and this is before we had a baby. And I was like, I'm going to Japan, sucker. Like, see you later. And then I made a comic for people on the internet, like for my readers, to show me around Japan. And like 5 people emailed, and I got to like pick what I wanted, and I met them, and they didn't kill me, and it was
Yeah.
amazing. And
Awesome.
Yeah, it's
they're
always good
like,
not to be killed.
it
know.
was like, it was so cool to be like I don't know, the internet's a complicated place, but to
Yeah.
harness
Yeah.
the power of the internet in a way that's like, I'll just get an email that's like, I'm Edna and I sleep with my plush toy and I'm 39. And I'm like, yeah, rock on. Like,
Do you
it's,
still sleep with your stuffed animal?
Butter Udder's getting a little worn out. So I got like a tiny wicker chair for her off the free group. So now she supervises. I'm on like a free Facebook like
Oh yeah,
stuff
those are
group.
great.
Yeah, she like supervises me from a table,
From
but
far.
there's always
Well,
some kind of
yeah.
stuffed animal rolling around
Yeah.
in my bed somewhere. But
It's
no,
funny.
I love it. And the comments, sometimes the comments are hard. Like there's like a Patreon is how I make a lot of my money,
Yeah.
and
Sure.
there's like an exit survey if people stop following. And I don't take it personally. It's like, oh, you're here for a little while. You're, even
Right.
if you sign up and read all the comics and you come back a year later and then read all the comics, that's fine. But I don't read the exit surveys because they're like, this comic used to be funny. And that
Yeah.
one will just haunt me to my dying day. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. Your life is no longer funny.
And it's just such a big statement
Statement. Yeah.
that's like,
None of them are funny anymore. So let me just pack up. And I think that's part of like my fear with comments too. But going back to something you said about letting the family come through your house, I like instantly went to something you said early in the conversation, be like, are you the one that painted this layer? Are you the reason my doors don't close?
he was a boy, so he
Okay.
was not liable, and his
Is your
parents were not
family?
present. That's a good question. Look, did you do this? Is this what you did? Did you
Yeah.
paint these hinges and then open the door aggressively 10 times?
Yeah, I would take full advantage of that. Like, if anyone came to this house, like I know the people that have lived in my house and it's been around for years, really too long. We should knock it down. But like I would ask, why? What does this switch do? We have a switch in the house. No idea what it does. I've tried to figure it out. Can't figure it out. But that's awesome.
It's like still connected to something in the previous owner's like neck. And they're like,
Yeah.
I love when that family tries that switch again.
Oh, they had heat tape on a timer, and the timer stopped working, so it stayed on. So it was one of those things that keeps like your pipes from freezing, right?
Mm.
And one day I look at our electric bill and it's like $1,000 for the month, and I'm like, what? Like what is this about? And then we finally traced it back to a faulty timer, and they didn't even need it anymore. So because it's all insulated, yeah, it was crazy. But anyways, I digress. Jackie, we're getting close to like the end of our time here with you, and I want to make sure that you've gotten to cover everything you want to cover. So it's like that infamous question I mentioned earlier. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about, that you want to share with your fans, or any advice that you have? So while you're thinking about that, maybe tell us about a time that that was like something that happened by accident that was just really awesome that you never expected from one of your comics? Wow, two. Actually, that's two big questions that might be
There's
thinkers.
a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
Really putting her on the spot.
Something that happened by accident. Very drunk young woman recognized me in Austin at night, and she was part of a bridal bachelorette party. She was not the bride, but she was like, "Oh my God, are you Underbites and Overpants?" And I was like, "Yes." And she was like, and then all of her friends took her away, and it was just a really lovely moment to share with another
Awesome.
person.
I've been drunkenly recognized too, but
Seriously?
misrecognized.
Oh, who did they think you were?
I still to this day don't know, but it was someone very famous, and they wanted to get a picture with me and all this other stuff, and they were very, very drunk. So probably, I was like Winona Ryder to them or something.
Did you do it? Did you play
Sure,
along?
I did. Like at first it was like back when there was like digital cameras and it wasn't a phone, and she was holding up, and I'm not even kidding, backwards at first, the friend who was also very drunk, and I'm like, this is gonna not even work. So yeah, sure.
Somewhere there's a printed photo of you, Nick, that was like the time I met
Winona Ryder.
Winona Ryder, and she told me all about Beetlejuice.
Yeah,
They're
great.
so excited about the time they met you.
Yeah.
You can't even. You made their life.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, Jackie. But is there anything else that you like want to share with us that you definitely want the audience to know about?
I don't know. I did fill out your fun fact thing,
Yeah.
and I love taking pictures of Rochester's curb culture is just off the charts.
Oh,
The best
I
thing
love it.
best thing in the world. And so I love taking pictures of like sad ottomans and lazy boys and all these things. And then in my Instagram stories, I like put faces on them and like make them have little personalities. And I've had people be like, "You have made me see the world in a different way." Like now whenever I hear the trash truck coming, I just imagine like how hungry it is and how excited it is to like fulfill its job. And so I personify things probably to a fault because I like feel sorry for objects. Sometimes I take them in.
I do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you don't wear your one shirt too often, you're like, I feel bad. And then I have to remind myself, like, doesn't have any sentient, it is not a sentient being. My shirt doesn't feel bad. I feel bad. But I love that. I love when you put like little eyes on an old chair on the street.
Yeah. Little backstory to like why it's there and how it's been interacting.
I make I see any random thing and I'm like, oh, I will literally just start verbal. I say fiction's not hard, but then I start going on to these. My daughter and I will do it. We'll create whole stories like while we're walking around TJ Maxx about some random person holding a bottle of lotion. We're like, you know what they're doing, and then we have this whole thing. And
right, like someone had a hard day.
Yeah,
they, now they got to buy lotion for their elephant that lives in the basement.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. Awesome, Jackie. Thank you so much for being on That Sounds Terrific in the 585 and for helping us with our inaugural episode and our rebranding. You've been an absolute terrific guest.
Oh,
thanks so much. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah. Thanks for doing really wonderful things in our community, and we need more artists in the world. We absolutely do. And so you're an inspiration to many, many people. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of That Sounds Terrific in the 585. Check out our website, www.thatsoundsterrific.com, to see a full list of episodes and learn more about our hosts, Nick Koziol and Christine Green. Be sure to find us on your favorite social media platforms or podcast listening service by searching That Sounds Terrific, and feel free to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoy our show. Until next time.